Hey folks, my name is Itimi and welcome to another edition of Founders Connect. Thank you for that, that was cool. On Founders Connect, I have conversations with amazing entrepreneurs and operators in the African tech ecosystem. One of the reasons why I really enjoy this is because I get the opportunity to just sit and have conversations. I just listen to some people I admire from afar and just tell the story. I'm like, oh wow, so the you I know on Twitter, like this is you. And so today, this conversation right now, the one you're about to watch, it promises to be really exciting because the person is an amazing person. Her name is Karumone. She's managing editor and acting editor-in-chief of TechCabal.
Yes.
How
Hello.
You doing, Kiki?
Thanks, Peace. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here and honoring my invitation.
Absolutely
Excited.
How can we both be in the same place and not have a conversation?
Hey, God, look at that.
It's not possible, guys. Thank you.
Amazing.
Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Itimi, a change maker, professional, and creative who is passionate about growing people and growing businesses. Like, comment, subscribe to my channel, and please always share my videos. It promises to always be impactful and insightful.
I was thinking about this conversation this morning and I was like, how would I start a conversation? I'm like, the Karumone I know now is a prophetess. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And you are one of the leading ladies in tech, right?
By the grace of God.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm own it to your chest, right?
Let me own it.
Exactly.
Yes.
But I also want to know, I know what your career has been like, but I'm curious about the person.
Yeah.
Right, and how this person has become, like what made you you. So give me a bit of like background story, like where did Karumone fall from?
Oh wow, that's such a good question. I want to say that I have this picture of me literally being dug up from the ground.
Okay, give context to that.
So I don't think I fell so much as I was raised up. You know, so just kind of like somebody broke through concrete and just said, okay, here's something very special that we're gonna pull out. So I in every step, in every major milestone in my life, it has been that picture of literally being pulled out of one place and placed in another place, right? But at the core, at the center of me, I like to say I'm a creative storyteller. And then as I moved into the corporate world, I became a business storyteller. But I still say creative or business, regardless, storytelling is the core of me. So it informs everything that I do, both in my personal and my career life as well. You know, and I also say that my father, who's late now, had a very, very strong influence on my life, especially my work life. He taught me a lot about like values, discipline, not being entitled to certain things, like for example, money. If you're not the one working for it, you don't get to be entitled to somebody else's money. And that's how he raised me, and that's how he raised my siblings. You know.
What's your favorite memory of your dad?
Oh my goodness. One always comes to mind. I was teaching at BIS at the time, I would say.
That's British International? Yeah,
British International School in 2016, early 2016. And one day I came back from work and I was so tired. And as soon as I walked into the door, you know, you walk in and it's the living room. My dad just saw me. He got up and he did this thing where he would just come put his forehead on my forehead and like started dancing around. You know, and I just immediately, I just felt like the stress of that day just melted away, you know. I have many memories, but that one for me stood out because, you know, he was chilling, he was done with for the day, and he just sort of showed that affection in that moment because I think he sensed that I needed it. I'd had such a stressful day, you know. But yeah, top memory.
Okay, still about memories, what's your favorite childhood memory? And where did you grow up?
Okay, so I was born in Kano State. I lived there till I was 4. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of memories from there because obviously we left when we were quite young. My brother and I were born a year apart, so he was 5
Just
when we
you?
left. No, there's 4 of us.
Okay.
I have 2 younger sisters. So I would say, so I was born in Kano. We moved to Lagos, and then we've lived in Lagos, you know. So I'd say my favorite childhood memory actually involves going back to my father's village for Christmas. So during our formative years, we spent a lot of Christmases in his village, and his village is in Sagbama. I was in Bayelsa State, but Sagbama local government, and you know, all the couriers would meet up, right? So it was a massive like Christmas affair, and then I would see all my cousins, older, younger as well, and just that feeling of being in the village where, you know, things were really simple. And I mean, my dad's village is a lot different now, but back then, like I'm talking like 10, 20 years ago, things were not fully developed, so you were really living that village life, like, you know, running around the streets, no shoes, like everybody was just carefree. And there's this thing we used to do where on Christmas they would go around singing, and and going from house to house and asking for Christmas money. So you just see like this long procession of little kids.
Oh my God, I remember that as well. It used to happen a lot to me.
Yeah, right.
Just wear your Christmas clothes and you go from door to day, and every day they're already waiting for all the kids in the street.
They're literally waiting,
so
right?
they'll give you food, give you money.
Exactly.
You sit down for a bit, watch TV, counting, and 5 minutes and you have to go to the next house.
Exactly. So it's just kids, and then you see like the aunties, the older cousins, like walking behind, just ensuring that we're good. But I really love that sense of community, especially in such a simplistic environment. That stayed with me. That still stays with me. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you moved to Lagos, like, are there things about Lagos that you really like? Because when you say things like the simplicity and community of going back to the village, like, has stayed with you.
Yeah.
Are there things about Lagos and its chaos?
Oh God.
That's kind of like stayed with you.
Honestly, no. I'm not buying into this Lagos chaos. I'm honestly not. And I think the novelty of Lagos has worn off me, because I've been here. I moved back officially in 2016.
Where did you move from?
I was in New York for a while, and see, now New York is a big city, but the chaos makes sense. There's still order. If someone does something crazy, at least there's people to check you and be like, we don't do that over here.
It happens, it happens.
Yeah, but New York is crazy, don't get me wrong. But Lagos, I feel like, is disorganized chaos. But one thing I do love about Lagos is the opportunity to meet very interesting people. And as a storyteller, that matters to me. I feel like in Lagos, I'm like, there's always a story to tell. I'm always, when I'm driving, I'm always like looking around, observing, because I'm like, Lagosians are intense and insane people.
And very interesting people.
So from the storytelling aspect, yes, Lagos is a cultural melting pot, right? So if you want to meet diverse personalities, Lagos is where you want to be. That's the only thing I like about Lagos.
And how did you start your storytelling career? Where did you start from?
It started actually in high school, year 11. Shout out to my English teacher, Miss Calstado, my English literature teacher, actually. She had given us an assignment to write a descriptive essay. We're preparing for IGCSEs, and she had given us a theme or a topic, and she said, write a story, but it had to be descriptive. So when I submitted my work after class, she called me and she's like, you have a skill here. You should definitely. She actually said you should study this in uni. She's the reason why I chose creative writing.
Oh, so that's what you studied?
Yeah, English and creative writing. Yeah, Hofstra University.
That's when you moved to New York?
Yes, that's when I moved to New York.
How long did you spend? How long was
7
school?
years.
7 years? Tell me about your life in New York.
Oh, man. New York.
Pick the milestones and high points of the studying and living in New York.
My favorite city, so New York really was where, the culture, especially Black culture, really cemented my love for storytelling. So leaving high school, knowing that I had the skill and I really wanted to develop it, I went into uni actually wanting to study journalism. So I started off print journalism, then I thought it's too structured. I want to be a lot more creative. So I switched majors halfway through my freshman year. Then in my poetry class, in my second semester, she had asked us, my poetry teacher again, her name is Connie Roberts, she had asked us to write a poem on something. And so we had to go around to read the poem. I was the only one who got up. I don't know why I got up. Till this day, I don't know why I got up, but I was like, can I stand up and read this poem? And she was like, go for it. It's beautiful, wonderful Irish woman. So I read it, and I remember after I was done, she looked at me and she's like, okay. She said, there's something here. The same thing again. And she said to me, she was like, you're a great writer, but I also think you could be a better performer. So she was the one that introduced me to spoken word poetry, which I did for almost 7 years, actually, from like my time in New York. A little bit when I moved back to Lagos, but Lagos is not really keen on that. Lagos is not really keen on that. So she recommended this poetry cafe in the city called Nuyorican Poets Cafe, and all the greats, including Kanye West. All the greats have performed there, right? Like, that's almost where everyone starts from, right? So I went in with a few of my college friends, and my first night there, just watching poets come up. And it was slam poetry night. So you had to compete, 10 poets, the audience votes, and they knock it down to 3. And the last 3 perform, and they pick a winner. Right, so it was like a big deal. Yeah. So I remember watching these poets, black, as in like it was. All kinds of people came, but it was, black people. Poets. Yeah. Just hard, and because they knew they were coming there to give their all. The stuff they wrote, the stuff they produced, but most especially how they commanded that stage. It wasn't a big stage; it was a small cafe, packed out every Tuesday night when they had their slam nights. But man, I was like, that's what I want to do. So I started to practice. I was really bad in the beginning, but obviously with practice, I got better. I got better. I started to learn how to write to perform as opposed to write to be read.
Right. So the two different ways of portrait.
Yeah. So there's poems I can write that you can read and be like, oh, cute. But I would never perform it because it doesn't pack a punch. But if you want me to perform a poem, I can write something that can pack a punch, you know. So I got better. Now let me tell you where things changed. I remember there was this college slam poetry competition, and it was Hofstra, St. John's, NYU, a couple of other colleges around the area, and we had been invited. Our slam poetry team in Hofstra had been invited, you know, and I was asked to do a piece. And after I remember this was the biggest audience I'd ever performed since I started. Afterwards, one of the guest performers, this theater guy, came up to me. His name is Shadrach, and he said, "You have a gift. I want to train you."
Wow.
He said, "You're a very gifted poet, but you need to get better at performing, and you need to learn how to perform without a microphone." I was like, huh? And he said, "I'm going to teach you how to perform in front of large crowds without needing a mic." So the training began. Wow. He was a coach. Have you ever experienced a coach? He was a coach. He coached me. And then I mean, I'm still very feisty, but then I was feisty, you know, so he used to like deal with me, like, you know, you need to show up on time, He used to tell me, okay, go perform here, don't use a mic. And I used to fight him. I used to be like, how can you say I shouldn't use a mic? Look at how small I am. How will my voice? And he used to teach me. But trust me, when I got it, the first day I performed in front of another large crowd without that mic, I'm telling you, I shut down the place. I shut it, like the stage presence, I mean, and after that night, I trusted him. I was like, you know what you're talking about. Yeah. You know, so when people talk about my speaking skills, I say, look, I actually was trained. I was trained on how to carry, like how to throw my voice. So he would go all the way to the back of a hall and he'd be like, start. So we used to train in the high school. So we'd go into one of their halls and he would tell me, go. And I mean, I couldn't shout. I couldn't shout. I had to just throw my voice. He didn't want me yelling. So he would teach me how, like, he was like, some parts of the poem you have to drop your voice, but people still need to be able to hear you. Crazy, right? Yeah. You know, so New York for me was both culture and education. Then New York was also where I gained my first work experience in the corporate world. Okay, it wasn't in Nigeria. So I started working on campus, and it was like started getting promoted. Like, I mean, I was really experiencing what it meant to go up the ladder. You know, started off like I was doing public safety. So started off like working in the booth, signing students in, and then got promoted working in the office, and got promoted to supervisor. You know, and you're watching like your paycheck increase, you're watching your responsibilities, you're learning how to hand over properly, all of that, then moving on to Mashable, moving on to Ebony. So all of these things just kind of shaped my work ethic. So when I moved back to Nigeria, I was shocked, first of all, by how lackadaisical we can be about work. I was like, guys, I was shocked by how slow things move because I was just used to that. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah. You know, even when I was interning at Mashable, I only had one person. I worked with one editor, and she would just tell me, this is what I want you to do every week. We'd have one meeting a week, and she would leave me. And other times it was just slack. We you know, and then you're working with like distributor teams. So, you know, it was, I mean, New York was it for me.
So why did you leave?
I thought I wanted to come and change Nigeria.
You thought?
Just tell me. Yeah. I was like, no, let me bring my skills back. And Nige was like, my friend, will you get away from here, you know? So I really moved back because I thought I want to bring like what I've learned. And I really wanted to bring that spoken word culture. But Lagos was not down.
So tell me about your first like couple of years back in Lagos doing spoken word poetry.
Oh man, I remember going to Bogobiri because everybody was like, oh my goodness. I had to beg them to keep quiet. I was like, God, please, can you just give me like 2 minutes? I've worked really hard on this piece. They did not. People were having meetings. I could hear people laughing. Oh man, I was shocked because I was used to getting on stage and people just going quiet because they knew that, if somebody is coming to do a poem, we have to listen to what they have to say. So I think after like the second year, I stopped. I stopped doing performances, and I said, no, I'm not going to water down. So people used to tell me, oh, you don't want to hear all this deep stuff, like, get down to their level. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not doing it. However, I will say though that because music is changing, I'm seeing people incorporate spoken word now into, there's this guy I love, Obong JR. He's an artist. He's like Burna Boy, but he uses spoken word. So he sings, he raps, but he does spoken word. And I'm like, yeah, this is. If I were to go back to it, it would be.
So after you stopped performing at Bobogiri, did you just stop?
I just stopped. I just said.
Did you still write poetry?
I do. I still write, but I was like, I'm not going to give Lagos audiences the gift anymore, because I felt like they just were like, Lagos, what's all these? What are you saying? That was it. That was like what I was getting, because at the end of the day, if a performer gets on stage, you should actually respect them. I'm like, this is not Pangolo music. Do you understand what I mean? Like, I'm here to actually deliver a message, and if you don't want to listen to it, then I'm not going to waste my time. I didn't want to, that wasn't my bread and butter, so it didn't mean that much to me that they didn't really care about it.
It's really interesting. The story is very interesting, by the way. So you talked about NewYork, and you said that two key things that NewYork did for you was culture and education. And that just has shaped who you are, who you've become.
Definitely.
And you talked about starting poetry and meeting Shadrach, and just learning the skill and honing your skill. What else did poetry teach you as you wrote and as you performed? Not the training part of becoming a better person. As just, now I'm a poet, now people actually listen to me. What about that experience do you still have with you?
Oh man, I think writing. So one of my favorite things to do was to actually write poems for whatever event. So as opposed to saying, I have a body of work, let me pick a poem. So depending on what the theme of the event was, I would write something specific for that.
Right.
And then I would picture myself performing it, and I would say, what do you want people to feel when they listen to this poem? And I would just drive that. So poetry allowed me to connect to the emotions of people in a very interesting way. And again, for a lot of the crowds I performed in front of, they were not used to my performance style. When you hear what people think spoken word poetry sounds like, they think it sounds a bit sing-songy. That was not. Shadrach trained me to be a hammer. He was like, you've got to hone your power and you have to deliver it. And he's like, at the end of it, I want them to go whoa. So for me, I learned how to take people on a ride and just hold them until the very end. So I never wrote long poems. I would keep it between 1 minute and 2. Unless I was doing a slam poetry night, and then it would be 3 minutes, because that's what's expected. They want you to tell a story from start to finish, right? So I learned how to connect with people's emotions. I remember I wrote this poem about my grandmother, and after I was done, this white woman came up to me and she was weeping, and she was like, oh my goodness, I know that this was about your grandma, but I connected so well because you had described this woman in a way that resonated with me. And I got a lot of that. I would perform, and afterwards people would come up to me and be like, what? And sometimes people would ask me, have you ever experienced this before? And I'm like, no. I just wrote this because I figured you have experienced it, and I wanted you to connect with that. So I like to say I know how to manipulate the English language to work.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Can I come and be trained as well?
Oh,
do you want to pass the baton on what Shadrach has done for you?
Woman. Stop it.
You have a gift.
Yeah, let me hone it. You never know, guys. Watch out.
Okay, so tell me, when you moved back to Lagos and you started working, aside the culture shock that we like to chill.
Huge culture.
What else? Just tell me about your career so far.
Yeah, so when I moved back, I started off as a personal trainer, because I was really big.
Weight loss?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was really big.
You've not touched that. I didn't see that coming.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So I did start New York was really influential in my life. So I did get into that workout culture heavy in college.
Oh, okay.
Right? I know in college, because you have so much space between your classes, I could spend 2 hours in the gym, and it was nobody batted an eyelid. It was normal, and I would be the only woman in the weight room, and I'm legit lifting weights, and all the guys are these guys are playing lacrosse, soccer, so they're there to train for a sport. I'm there just I
like it.
So I came back, and obviously at that time in Lagos, fitness wasn't really a thing, but I'd come back and I was I wanted to introduce it, into specifically my network, So I should train women, I used to train some of my friends. And then after a little while, I got a little bored. I get bored very quickly, and I was like, okay, I want to actually get like a proper 9 to 5. So I went back to BI. So BI, that's where I went to high school. Okay. So I went to them and I was like, hey, I would like to teach English. Do you guys have any open positions? And they were like, yeah, we actually do. Year 9 to 11, we have a couple of classes. I don't have a teacher. We've been kind of pairing that class with another teacher. It's getting a bit too much. Would you like to do it? I'm like, yeah, sure. You know, so I came in and I started to teach. I loved it. Especially loved my year 11s. I loved teaching. I felt like I got to understand kids in a very different way. I especially loved watching the relationships between parents and their kids. Nigerian parents have very interesting relationships with their children. On open day, you would see like moms everywhere, and you would see the moms who were just there like, bro, let me just come at 6. Oh yeah, it's okay, thank you. Some just came, collect report and go. Some like sat down, it's just very interesting. But especially what I loved talking to the kids, right? Because, when people talk to 14, 15-year-olds, they just think, what do these ones know?
Yeah.
My kids were smart.
So much about this. Yeah.
I mean, I learned so much, In fact, even inspired a short story that I'm working on this character, Darlene Coker, but it's based on two female students I taught in BIS, just because the way they moved around, they were very popular girls in year 11, and they were both loved and hated. It was very interesting seeing how people responded to them, even teachers, how teachers responded to them, how they view them. Very interesting, But I enjoyed that.
How long did you do that for?
I did that for almost a year.
Okay.
But then I had to leave due to inappropriate behavior by someone high level. Okay. And that wasn't fun. I didn't like that. And I didn't like that I had to leave for that reason, because that was the only reason I left. It wasn't like the job wasn't fulfilling. I loved it. I would have stayed for as long as I needed to stay. Yeah.
After Flutterwave, what would you say has been the next milestone in your career?
I would say that I think every other thing that I did afterwards was great. I mean, I did some work for Wallets.Africa when they were still Wallets.ng, moving to Klein, moving to Arca. So Arca and Klein are sister companies. So I was helping both companies with their storytelling. But what I would say I stuck to was remaining in the ecosystem. So it wasn't like I left Flutterwave. Right. It was like, okay, that's it. I still kept those connections. I still reached out. I still asked questions. I still tried to be relevant, and be a part of every conversation, right? And I also understood that because I was a woman with a non-technical background, non-payments, I had a unique opportunity to actually really grow my roots down deep in the ecosystem, as opposed to being flitting about it and just hopping. I was like, no, you need to build relationships and ensure that there are people who know that even though you're not working for Flutterwave anymore, you still know your stuff, So I would say everywhere I've moved to since Flutterwave has mattered. To me, it's helped me grow. It's helped me develop my skills as well, So every company.
I really love the way you answered that question. That every other company has mattered.
Oh, every other company has mattered. Flutterwave, I mean, top. But
it was the door.
It was the door.
Yeah, and that foundation was important.
It was I don't think I would be where I am today without that foundation.
Yeah, but now you're in TechCabal. So let's talk about TechCabal.
Oh God.
I mean, Flutterwave, Klein, Agas, it was tech products.
Yes.
Storytelling for those tech products.
Yes.
And then you moved back to PR, like actual journalism.
Like the roots. Back to the beginning, exactly, something that I ran away from.
Question is why and how?
Oh my goodness. So I want to say that TechCabal is a gift from God, just because of the opportunities that I've received just from doing this job. But TechCabal came, the opportunity came, somebody sent me a WhatsApp message and said, TechCabal is looking for a managing editor. I saw it editor-in-chief. I saw it in their newsletter, TC Daily. I think you should apply for the role. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, really? Can I see myself in this? So I said, you know what, fine. So I reached out to Bankole and I was like, hey, I heard TC's hiring an editor-in-chief. Do you think I should apply for it? And he was like, go for it. And he sent me the link and I applied for it. And then a week later, Tomiwa sent me an email and was like, hey, we want to interview you for the role. So I had like 3 interviews. And then in the final stage, Tomiwa was like, okay, we want to hire someone else for the editor-in-chief role, but we want to give you a different role. We want to give you a managing editor role.
Please, for those of us that don't work in journalism,
There's two different roles, guys. So I want to say the editor-in-chief is like the CEO, and the managing editor is like the COO. So as managing editor, I manage newsroom operations. I manage the newsroom, I manage the team of reporters. I ensure that they meet their deadlines, I ensure that they have their pitches ready, they're in meetings, I connect them and all of that. The editor-in-chief provides high-level direction. So we should be talking about
strategy.
Yes, these are the things we should explore. We should do less of this and more of this, you know. They also represent the brand. So you see me doing a lot more speaking engagements because
now you're acting.
Now I'm acting editor-in-chief, so I've got to get ahead of that, right? So I thought that was a perfect role for me to grow into. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah, exactly. So it's like that's the irony. So like when I look back, I'm like, the role I actually applied for, I ended up like coming into it in a very interesting way. But I jumped at it because, and I found out later that one of the reasons Tomiwa hired me was one, for leadership. I'm very big on leadership. I'm very big on impacts leadership. I don't joke around with leadership. I see.
And when you say leadership, you mean leading people and being able to impact those people?
I mean, I wish more Nigerian leaders understood how important it is to empower their team members, because empower. Because I don't understand this authoritarian thing where you want to like crowd them. No, tell them what they need to do and step back and give them the room to do whatever. Sometimes they will fail, and you have to come back up and say, okay, you know what? Let's try this again. You know, so. For me, Tomiwa identifying that in me meant a lot because there were gaps in the editorial part, but the leadership qualities were strong enough for me to get that role. And then he also said he knew I could grow into it because I'm a very quick learner, you know. So TechCabal, obviously media, so that's behind the scenes. And I love that because I was like, I have an overview of the ecosystem now and I can be in different sectors and be like, what's happening in health, what's happening in education, as opposed to working with one sector product, and one company and only just having this narrow view of what's actually, but meanwhile the ecosystem is so wide and so diverse, you know. So TechCabal has provided me with this unique view that, I mean, I know I mean, even if I move on, I don't know how else I'll be able to get that, you know, unless, again, I work for another organization that has that overview, again, of the entire, I'm saying the entire ecosystem, every region.
So that's where you see yourself still, just...
Yes. Yeah, I don't think I can. I mean, but Tayo from Paga, if you call me, I'll say yes.
Okay, shoot your shot, girl.
No. Tayo is
shoot the shots. Okay.
He's doing something. You
should actually get Tayo for Founders Connect.
Please get him. Tayo, say yes. Yeah, okay. I would work for Tayo. But apart from that, yes, I do want to sit on that like high level, just providing insights, letting people know what's really happening. So whether that's for another media publication or just a different kind of organization, that's something that I definitely want to do. Yeah.
Okay. What's it like handling two very distinct roles?
Oh my God, it's intense.
From my perspective, a COO and a CEO, that's a shit ton of work.
It's intense.
How?
It's intense. So
what's the
I have to big up our leader, Tomiwa. Tomiwa is a great boss. And he knows that this role is stretching me. He knows that this role is challenging. And every step of the way, he's telling me, like, reach out. If you need support, reach out, you know. And we have a great team at Big Cabal Media, both the TechCabal team and then the wider Cabal leadership team. So whenever I know that I need help, we don't encourage working in silos at BCM. So you'll never be working on a document and then you lock it and you're only sharing it one person. You open it up for everyone to be able to leave comments. And that just shows like a very high level of transparency. So when you know you have support systems around you, you don't go into a role and do it alone. So from the moment the role was offered to me, I mean, I spoke to the leadership team and I'm like, this is a different kind of role and I'm going to need support. That means I need to be in fewer meetings. That means I need to be high level all the time. I can't like don't bring me down to that. I would delegate, but high level because that's where primarily my mind needs to be. So I have to learn how to balance both managing the newsroom and then providing strategic direction to TechCabal, you know. So it is a very challenging role. I'm never going to front, but I know that if I feel like I'm about to fail, I can just be like, hey guys, I'm struggling. Important. Yeah, it is. And that's the thing. Tomiwa didn't give me the role because he felt like, oh yeah, KK is gonna fail. It's more like, I feel like she could really grow into this, and there's an opportunity. I have 6 months to like, prove myself, essentially. I mean, we're actively looking for someone, don't get me wrong, but still, it's that 6 months of, okay, let's try it out, let's see what happens, and if it's not great, then we can bring somebody in. Yeah.
That makes sense. When you talked about your work at BIS, you said that you left because of harassment, and you're more in tech, so I would assume, and correct me please if I'm wrong, that that's not the only time that you've dealt with that.
No.
How have you navigated it, and how has it just affected who you've become and how you approach work in tech?
I mean, in the beginning, I was really bummed out because I thought, man, this is already a very difficult ecosystem for women to get into, right? Especially if you really want to like be successful in it. And I have no plans of stepping out of this ecosystem.
Okay.
At first, I have no plans. I'm taking this to the world.
Love it.
But I began to speak to some of my mentors, some of my male mentors, about how to handle it, older men, about how to handle things like this. And it was one thing was always constant from them, and that was put up boundaries and do not break those boundaries for anybody. So they must know from the get-go that you are not someone to mess with. Even if they approached you on that, just be like, this is not what's happening here. If you don't want a professional relationship, I am happy to. I don't need anything from you. Whatever business you want to bring to our team or whatever, we don't need it. Because at the end of the day, if somebody gets in through the door because you compromise on your values, then you're gonna have a hard time kicking them out, right? And I'm just not interested in that. So I learned how to say no. I learned how to be strong with that no, and to make it clear that that's not what we're here to do, right? And then over time, I mean, it still happens, but I'm very careful. I'm very observant. I observe body language. I observe certain things. I try to keep the conversations as professional as possible, and then if somebody wants to develop a friendship, then I'm like, okay, why? I have, trust me, I have enough, right? So what's going on, So it's boundaries are important, and not being afraid to say no. I do think that Nigerian women especially, our voices have been so oppressed that sometimes we want to fight back and we keep thinking, okay, what's going to happen if I speak up? And there are consequences for speaking up, don't get me wrong. Sometimes you lose things because you speak up. Sometimes you're blackballed, sometimes you're blacklisted. But listen, I'd rather speak up and maintain my integrity than be quiet. Because what's happening is that person is actually feeding off your timidity, and they're gonna keep pushing it. Because that's what happened at BIS. He just kept pushing. Each time the demand got a bit more audacious, got a bit more perverted, and I was like, okay, So after that was a lesson for me. I was like, if you want to say no and walk away. You will get back whatever it is that you think you lost at the end of the day.
That's a very good lesson. Thank you for answering that. So one of the things that I pick from your story is that you're very big on learning and training. You talk a lot about different points when you be trained to become something, and talk about just learning to become something. So it would seem like you take every new challenge it's a learning opportunity that I'm going to just try and learn and go. But is there any specific challenge that wasn't just I needed to learn and I needed to be trained? It was just a challenge of something else. And maybe something that almost broke you and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to surpass this, or a mistake that you made or something like that.
Oh man, I made a lot of mistakes. You know what, let me share one. Man, I shared this story. Oh man, because the audacity of me to do this thing. But there was one meeting that we had in 2017 at Flutterwave. It was a heated meeting. It was a leadership meeting and GB was leading it. And it was time for me to do my presentation. I was presenting on some numbers, social media numbers and everything. And GB and I got into a back and forth. And then GB just shut down the conversation and kind of moved on. And then I was like, what? How can you dismiss me like that? So I then talked back. GB kicked me out of that meeting. He actually said, get up. He actually kicked me out. He didn't want to hear anything. And I almost lost my job, and the biggest lesson I learned from that was to control my emotions. Yeah. Because we had a conversation afterwards. I was actually suspended for 2 weeks. We had a conversation afterwards, and he told me that he didn't have a problem with me pushing back or even calling him out, but he had a problem with me doing it publicly, in front of
his leadership.
Yeah, it's leadership, right? And it's like, you didn't represent me well in that moment, And he was like, honestly, I should have been fired for that, but I wasn't, because again, the company, the team saw the value that I brought, and they also knew that I was still quite green. And what you could get away with in America, you can't get away with here in Nigeria, right? So there was also that cultural context that I was missing for a while, you know. So that was a learning experience for me. And after that, I never did it. I never pushed back like that again. Instead, I would wait and have private conversations and say, oh, and JB is open to that. You saying that, no, I didn't like this, I didn't like this, I didn't like this, you know. That was a big one for me. And interestingly enough, it happened again at Klein. I pushed back in a meeting, but I pushed back in a way that was respectful, but still was seen as a mistake. You know what I mean? Because to some people who were listening, they felt you should have just let it go. But to me, I felt, no, not really. But it was a mistake I was willing to bet on regardless, because if I didn't bet on it, I wouldn't have gotten TechCabal. I would have been stuck in a job that I didn't like. You know?
Audacity too.
Yeah, very I think sometimes you do have to be audacious, but you have to be audacious with wisdom. Like, you have to know who you're talking to. You have to realize who's in the room, and you have to weigh things before you speak. So learning how to control my emotions, big. Yeah.
Okay, any other mistakes, failures, challenges?
So another challenge, I think, is knowing when to leave is a place when you realize that you're not growing anymore. So a lot of people wait to get a new job. I leave as soon as I know. I don't wait. Because after I left Klein and before TechCabal, I think there were 2 months. I don't mind waiting. I'm like,
So like Kiki has money there, so.
Last, we're so Gary. You know what I mean? I knew I wasn't going to die. You know, my dad taught me how to save. So it's always important to have emergency funds, but I don't believe in staying in a place that no longer serves you and you're no longer interested in serving, because you are doing yourself a disservice and you're wasting your time. Listen, you don't get time back.
Yeah.
I mean, look, God redeems the time in theory, but like when you get to a practical level, like those 3 months you spent in that job before you finally left, or before you now got another offer, you wasted your time. You know, I hear people say things like I've checked out, I'm not even interested in the job anymore. Like, I'm just earning a salary. I can't do that, you know. I can't. So
whenever you're in a place, you can always guarantee that you give 100%. And
100% of me. Once I'm feeling like, oh, you know, this is toxic, or the leadership is no longer I am very big on leadership. I thrive really well under strong leadership. If I'm not thriving, it's because the leadership has failed me. 100% facts. Unless if it's my thing, that's different. But if I've come into an environment and a team of leaders are saying, oh, we're going to help you grow, or we're going to do XYZ for you, and you do XYZ for us, if you're failing on your part, bye-bye. Don't waste my time.
How do you grow your team? I mean, you mentioned before about being able to empower people, that's how big you are on leadership, and you've spoken about just how you take from the people there. But do you want to throw more light on just the kind of leader you are, or you're still growing to be?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pull from, reading my last team appraisals, because we all appraise everyone in the company, including Tomiwa. One of two things that stood out was, one, they talked about my energy, and the second thing they talked about was being a listener. So I don't go to my team members and just dump on them. Sometimes I come with instructions and I'm like, this is all we've come to talk about. But other times, especially when we have our one-on-ones, I just ask questions and I take notes and I listen to what they're saying, and I ask more questions and I say, okay, you just said this, what does this mean? And then I'm very specific about asking them what gaps exist and how can we help, or how can I as your manager help you plug that gap, right? Because once you start to treat your team members as just workers, they're not going to give you quality work. And it's important that TechCabal produces quality work. So that means extra care being given to the reporters and ensuring that they're in the right state of mind. Once I start hearing I'm feeling burned out, I pull them off projects. I'm like, go take a break. Because I've seen what happens when a reporter produces work when they're burned out. It's not high quality. And we are at this point in the publication's life where we cannot afford to produce low quality work, because the ecosystem is heating up and we are at the center of it. We're in the center of it, right? I listen, I pay attention to what they say, I repeat back things that they say, just so I'm like, is this what you meant? You know, you said this, is this what you're trying to communicate with me, right? And I don't allow them slack. It's very easy to get lazy.
So true.
I don't allow them to do easy stories.
Oh, okay.
No. So I read their pitch documents and I'm like, no.
Too easy for you.
No. You're not challenging yourself enough, right? We just, someone that started off as an intern last year just got promoted to being a staff writer, and I want him to be a senior features writer before the end of the year, right? And I said that because he just wrote something about Njoku Emmanuel of Laserpay that is doing
a beautiful
really
story.
well.
I read it this morning, or was it yesterday? Yesterday.
He started off as an intern. I had
story.
to send him Slack messages like, damn Larry, this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, because in the beginning when the stories were coming, it was like, this is too challenging. But I'm like, but I see where you are able to go. So it is possible for Damn Larry to become a senior features writer in 6 months, actually. But I'm saying the end of the year because I want him. So we have this value at BCM, punch above your weight. So I want him to punch above his weight and get that role in 6 months. But I said end of the year because I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want
too much pressure.
Yeah, too much pressure, because when there's too much pressure, you slip. Right, you drop multiple balls. So I'm like, end of the year. So that means Damn Larry has the opportunity to grow himself.
I'm rooting for him as well.
Yeah, Damn Larry, we're rooting for you.
Amazing.
So it's about challenging them. It's about reminding them of our values. And then we're also a very metric-driven newsroom. So it's about reminding them of their KPIs as well. Like, remember, you can be on space conversations, you can attend events, but don't forget your KPIs. And that's that you have to produce X amount of work every week, every month. It has to be this. You have to cover these regions. You have to cover these themes. Those are like when you are able to assign KPIs and metrics. Trust me, people grow very quickly.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
When you're speaking about, you said something about timing, and you say, oh, you don't lose time. I mean, you lose time and you can get it back. And then you said, oh, but well, God can always like give you back that time. I was like, oh yes, I want to talk to Kerman about God. I think one of the reasons why I'm very impressed by you, it's not just the work that you do, it's the person that you are and how you show all of yourself on social media, right? You're not just, hey, I work in tech, and then we just, I work in tech.
I also do this.
You know, I pray a lot in tongues, and you guys will see it, you know. And I find it very fascinating because there's not a lot of that, right? And I think it's very inspiring to just see someone who genuinely loves God and wants to serve God and still just keep in the same breath, in the same space. Yeah. So tell me a bit more about that. Just tell me about maybe finding God, how, I mean, God has come through for you at different points in your career. Because again, what we see, or at least the person in tech, and what this conversation has been about has been your career. Yeah. But when you know the person and you say, oh, you're a prophetess, like, oh, there's definitely a God factor in this career. And I kind of want to know a bit more about that.
Definitely. I would say that I found God, I mean, after my dad passed in 2017. I mean, I've been a Christian, but something about that experience and it happening very unexpectedly changed. Yeah, thank you. It really, I mean, we were scattered, you know. I think, well, now my siblings and I and my mom were sort of finding our way back. Yeah, but we were not expecting it. So it hit us, boom, he was just gone. And the day we found out, so we got the call Sunday morning, so like literally a few hours later the house got filled up, and then one of my dad's friends, a pastor, called me outside to the pool side, and he said to me, he said, yeah, I know that this sucks right now, but he said the prayer mantle has moved from your father, it's passed over your mom, and it's come on you. I was like, sir, I'm grieving. I don't know what you're talking, because the last thing on my mind, trust me, was God, prayer. What are you talking? I'm like, I was torn apart. Like, I was, completely just wrecked by what happened, But he just said to me, he said, trust me, this will make sense eventually, But I mean, there were a lot of things that happened between that conversation and being ordained last Sunday, and a lot of it had to do with my interactions with other Christians after I lost my dad. Not having that support, not having that community, watching people that I prayed with and fellowship for years, I've left that church now, but I realized that I needed to connect with God one-on-one and cancel everything I'd learned about God in church and start over. So I started over in 2017. It was a very
starting over like? What does that look like?
I really pulled myself out of that community, and I said I need to know God for myself, and I need to hear Him. I need to be able to differentiate from His voice, my voice, and other people's, even the voice of my pastor at that time. I needed to shut my ears to that, and then I needed to also grieve with God and be like, ask questions like, why did my dad have to die? Why this time? That was one of the reasons I left Flutterwave, because I wasn't okay. You know, I wasn't okay, and I was doing my job, but I wasn't myself. I was very isolated. I didn't talk to people. I just came to the office, did my job, and I left. So I was like, I walked away from a job that I love, and it was because the grief was too much. Eventually found my way back to a community in 2020, and that's really where this second half of my journey with God began. So the first half started after my dad died, where it was just a lot of anger, how could you, to now, okay, finding a new community, learning about healing, learning about love, and then learning about the gift. And that's the prophetic gift. Having elders identify it and say, okay, you will use this gift to serve God, but you also use it in the marketplace. So we don't want you to, I separated both. At some point in my life, I was like, I'm only a Christian. I only talk about God when I'm in church or in, fellowship. But then my work life is my work life. But then when they began to express what it meant to be a Christian in the marketplace, I was like, okay, I'm gonna bring the both of them together. And everybody has to know that there's no one without the other, right? And God comes first. So that helps me with my values. That helps me with saying no to a lot of things that I know will damage me in the long run. Or my ministry, and I don't want that to be affected in any way. Yeah.
That's amazing. You speak a lot about relationships.
It's very key. Right community.
Different people.
My goodness, there's power. Listen, that's why I said, look, don't waste your time in a place that is not feeding you. Right? There's power in right community. When you find your community, you will know, because you will begin to thrive. If you're not thriving, you're not in the right community. And it's not about expecting people to help you thrive. It's about, are these people accepting you, first of all, for who you are? The people who pastor and mentor me now have never said, KK, you need to be less of this. You're so dramatic. I heard a lot of this, like in my where I used to worship before, and it made me feel bad. But being in a community where, trust me, even as prophetic as I am, there's some who are even more prophetic, and even the way they express the Holy Spirit is completely different. And all of these people are in the marketplace. All of them, especially the elders, executives, they're not in this community to collect money from anyone. Again, that was quite different from what I'd experienced in the past, right? So being in that community with people saying, we are encouraging you to fully fall into this expression, it literally took me from, I think, 0 to like 1,000. So I always push for right community. In fact, I think a few of them are going to be speaking at Africa Next on this topic, on community. I believe it's March 4th, Wednesday. Listen, is it going to come out before then?
I don't think so.
The tweet about it then. But I mean, by the time it comes out, hopefully people would have,
see it.
But that's how much they know how important it is for people to be. And they don't tell everybody, oh, come to Kingdom Community. Yeah. If you are led there, trust me, you will know that you're supposed to be there. So very big on community. Very, very big on it. Very
That's
important.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I think I ran out of questions, guys. But one of the things that I think I've gotten from your story is there are a lot. It's a lot. I was asking questions and listening to you talk, and I was like, in some way, we've been able to touch on many different subjects. We've talked about God and grief, and talked about New York and culture, living in another place. We've talked about corporate career. We've talked about ecosystem. We've talked about a publication. We've talked about leadership. And we've been able to go around that topic because of the quality of person that you are, and I'm even more impressed now because I'm like, there's so much more.
There is.
There's the layer of stories. It's very phenomenal, and thank you for sharing with me.
You're welcome. I am really grateful to people who are willing to ask me questions, because in my experience, people take me at face value. And they don't care enough to dig deep, which I don't have a problem with, because once I sense that there's a special place that I put you, and I'm like, this person only wants surface information, I'll give you surface information. But anyone who dares to dig deep will realize that I'm a very layered person, and I'm a layered person because that's how God designed me to be, right? So there's just not one side of me. It's not possible, right? And someone I'm really inspired by is Jamie Foxx. I don't know if if you watch Jamie Foxx's interviews, you can tell first he's a gifted entertainer. He's not just an actor. actor.
Yeah.
I mean, and he leans
all
into
the way.
all.
Yeah, he'll do comedy, he'll sing, he'll act, everything.
I mean, this is someone that knows. He leans into all his gifts. And I remember watching him on Colbert one time, and I was like, my goodness, masterful interviewee. Like the way he carried that conversation, and the way Stephen Colbert was able to help him, because Jimmy, because he has all these gifts, he can be quite hyper. He was just able to ask some questions that were able to like calm him down, sometimes bring him back up. Watching him inspired me, because I'm like, this is somebody that understands who he is, and he leans into it. He has no, I mean, if you've ever watched him talk about the parties he used to throw back in LA, we invite Kanye, Jay-Z, you could tell that this man knew. He was an actor, but he wanted to get into music, and he would throw those parties to try to get, yes. And I remember he said he would talk about getting Diddy to one of the parties, like, yo, Diddy, you need to come through, like Jay-Z, Missy, and I'm like, I loved it. So ever since I watched that interview, I'm like, I'm gonna lean into everything, because I don't want people to be like, oh, this girl is just one.
It. Yeah.
No, you have to know all sides of me, so that you understand who you're dealing with, and if you're cool with it, then you're cool with it. If you're not, then you're not.
Then you're not for me.
Then you're not for me.
My final question is, when you were talking about Jamie Foxx now and just how layered you are, I said, I think I've asked good questions, but maybe I definitely haven't asked all the questions.
There's still so much more.
So what's one question you'd have liked me to ask you, or something you'd have liked to share that I just couldn't touch?
I love that. Actually, one would be, what does being called to the office of the prophet mean for me and in the marketplace, right? Please. Because ministry is ministry. Like when I posted that certificate, I said it's for God and the church. I meant that. But then it's also me understanding that there are people in the church who are also in the marketplace who need direction. Yeah. I prayed for her, and I only prayed for her because towards the end of our conversation, she said, I wanted to meet you, and I told God that, look, I don't know when this girl is going to show up at this conference, but I want to meet her. So the moment she said that, a door opened. Yeah. So when that door opened, I took that opportunity to minister to her, because I'm like, this is someone who is obviously trying to grow her professional career, but is also a Christian. Yeah. So what I will not do is just like go around to random people like, this is the word of the Lord. I will wait for an invitation, But for me, being able to serve, especially in high impact entrepreneurs in the marketplace, in Africa, in Nigeria, matters to me. And so in the church or at service, I am fully in that office. But when I step out and I come into the marketplace, I lean into the prophetic gift, not the office. Because when I'm at work, I'm not KK the prophet, I'm KK the managing editor. But then that doesn't mean that if I receive direction, I'm not going to pass it down. It would just be presented in a corporate way. Do you understand what I mean? So when we're trained that, hey, you're not going to go into the boardroom and start speaking in tongues, speak their language, but you're going with the power of the Holy Spirit. So you're setting yourself apart regardless, because people know that this person is cut from a different cloth. That's how Christians should be, to be very honest, in the marketplace. People have to know you're a different person. We can tell that there's something driving your values, but we can't see it. And that's quite okay. The people that can see it will know that that's the power of the Holy Spirit.
So how do I open the door? Do I need to how do I invite the word in?
Don't kill me. Did we ask that when you were talking about conversations with God? You've already opened the door. Don't worry about it. When I'm going to enter, that's what you don't know.
Okay.
But the door is open. The door is open.
Okay. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, mate.
Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure just getting to know you.
Yes. I really hope people understand me a bit better after watching this video.
I think so, and I think they would love you even a bit more.
I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope so.
So one of the things I tell people is that one of the reasons why I keep doing Found Corner interviews and just having conversations like this is because of how blessed I am from these conversations. Yeah. And when I hear someone's story, and I'm blessed and I feel a certain way, I'm like, I know that other people are going to connect to this story. Amazing. So I'm like, I've enjoyed this and have been blessed and I've learned, and I know that just from one person receiving, I can tell that other people will. I'm sorry. So I would love that. Thank you so much for just using this platform to share your gift.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you guys for watching this video to the end. Please let me know what you think in comments. Ask questions, share your thoughts. Yes. Share on social media, tag KK, and subscribe to my channel. Don't leave this channel. Prophesy that they will not leave my channel.
You will not leave this channel without subscribing, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. Bye.
Bye.